Daniel Wright adjusted his navy blue diplomatic uniform as he prepared for the third annual Galactic Concord Security Summit. He had been a Navy SEAL before becoming Earth's ambassador, and sometimes he still felt more comfortable in combat fatigues than in the stiff formal attire. The mirror showed a tall man with sharp blue eyes and a face that rarely revealed what he was thinking. "Ambassador, the Valaxians have arrived early," said Olivia Carter, entering his quarters aboard the space station, Harmonious Exchange. "They're already making comments about our primitive vessel technology to anyone who will listen." Daniel sighed. "Of course they are. What would a galactic summit be without the Valaxians reminding everyone they've had faster-than-light travel for 6,000 years?" Olivia handed him a data tablet. Her brown hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her expression was serious as always. "I've updated our files on all 27 species attending. The Murdarians have sent a new representative this year." "Thank you, Olivia. Where's Frank?" "Officer Barton is doing a final security sweep of our meeting rooms." Daniel nodded. Frank Barton was the kind of security officer who checked everything twice, which was exactly why Daniel had requested him for this mission. The space station buzzed with activity as representatives from across the galaxy arrived. Harmonious Exchange was enormous, almost a city in space, with different atmospheric sectors to accommodate the various biological needs of its visitors. The human delegation had been assigned quarters in Sector 7, which had Earth-like gravity and air composition. As they walked toward the main assembly chamber, Daniel observed the other species. A group of Keltorians floated by, their gas-filled bodies glowing with neural patterns. Two Dravak representatives stomped past on their 6 massive legs, their mineral-based bodies making heavy thuds against the floor. "Remember," Daniel said quietly to Olivia, "we're still the new kids here. Earth has only had official contact for 5 years. Most of these civilizations have been spacefaring for centuries, if not millennia." "Which they never let us forget," Olivia replied. They entered the enormous circular chamber where the summit would take place. Seats were arranged in rising tiers, with the Arbiter's platform in the center. The Arbiter, a member of the ancient Korath species, served as the neutral moderator for all Galactic Concord proceedings. Daniel spotted war diplomat Zex Troll of the Valaxians immediately. The 9-foot-tall insectoid being was hard to miss, with its iridescent exoskeleton and multiple upper limbs gesturing dramatically as it spoke to a group of smaller representatives. "The humans have arrived," Zex Troll announced loudly enough for everyone to hear, the translator device at its thorax converting the clicks and hisses into English. "Perhaps now they can tell us how they managed not to destroy themselves with nuclear weapons before achieving space travel." Several delegates laughed, though some looked uncomfortable at the blatant rudeness. Daniel smiled pleasantly. "Always a pleasure, war diplomat Zex Troll. I hope your 5th molting season was successful." The Valaxians' compound eyes narrowed slightly. Molting was a private matter for their species, and Daniel's knowledge of Zex Troll's personal cycle was a subtle reminder that humans were paying attention. Frank Barton joined them, his broad shoulders and vigilant eyes, making him instantly recognizable as security personnel despite his diplomatic uniform. "All clear, Ambassador," he said quietly. The Arbiter, a being who appeared to be made of living crystal, raised its upper appendages. "Representatives of the 27 recognized spacefaring civilizations. We call this security summit to order." Daniel took his seat, aware of the subtle dismissive glances from older species. Earth was still viewed as barely worthy of inclusion, a technological infant compared to the others. Humans had only developed warp capability 30 years ago, while some species in the room had been traveling between stars when humans were still figuring out agriculture. The Arbiter's voice resonated through the chamber. "Our first order of business concerns territorial expansion rights in the Perseus Arms sector." Daniel exchanged glances with Olivia. They had prepared extensively for this discussion. What the other species didn't yet understand was that while humans might lack advanced technology, they excelled at something else entirely: preparing for the worst. The discussion about the Perseus arm quickly grew heated. The sector contained 3 resource-rich star systems that several species claimed rights to. Daniel watched as representatives argued, their translator devices sometimes struggling to keep up with the emotional outbursts. The Valaxian Dominion has historical claims to these systems, Zixtral declared, rising to its full height. Its segmented limbs clicked as it pointed to the holographic map floating above the center of the chamber. Our survey vessels charted these regions 2,000 years ago. A representative from the Noor Collective, a species of crystalline beings, chimed in. Yet you never established permanent settlements. Under Concord law, exploration without colonization provides limited claim rights after the standard 500-year period. Daniel listened carefully, making notes on his tablet. Earth had no direct interest in the Perseus arm, but understanding how territorial disputes were handled would be valuable knowledge for future human expansion. Zextral's mandibles clacked together in irritation. Perhaps the Noor forget the might of the Valaxian fleet. We have 8 dreadnought-class vessels currently patrolling within 2 light years of the disputed territory. We are merely being courteous by bringing this matter before the Concord rather than protecting our interests directly. The threat hung in the air. Several smaller species shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Arbiter's crystalline form glimmered as it spoke. Threats of military action violate the primary tenets of this Concord. War diplomat Zixtral, you will retract your statement or face censure. The insectoid being made a gesture that the human delegation recognized as dismissive. I simply state facts. The Valaxian Dominion has the right and the might to protect what is ours. Some species understand only demonstrations of power. Its compound eyes swept over the assembly, lingering pointedly on the human delegation. Speaking of power, Zixtral continued, perhaps we should hear Earth's position. What protective measures could humans offer in such disputed regions? Your species has, 3 warp-capable vessels, and only 1 with any defensive capabilities. Several delegates laughed, though others looked embarrassed by the direct mockery. Olivia leaned toward Daniel. Standard deflection protocol, sir. Daniel considered for a moment, then shook his head slightly. 5 years of playing the humble newcomer had gotten Earth nowhere in these discussions. It was time for a change in approach. The Valaxian Dominion raises an interesting point about defensive capabilities, Daniel said, standing up. All eyes turned to him. Earth currently maintains a modest fleet by your standards. We have 5 warp-capable vessels, 3 with defensive systems. He paused, looking directly at Zixtral. However, I should mention that Earth has developed comprehensive contingency plans for neutralizing every species represented in this room, should the need ever arise. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the Arbiter seemed stunned. Daniel continued in the same casual tone one might use to discuss the weather. This includes detailed strategies for the Valaxian Dominion, accounting for your hive network communication vulnerabilities and the specific thermal regulation requirements of your warrior caste. Zextral's exoskeleton actually paled, shifting from dark green to a lighter shade. Ambassador Wright, the Arbiter said carefully, are you threatening the assembled delegates of the Galactic Concord? Daniel smiled pleasantly. Not at all. Arbiter, I'm simply being transparent about Earth's approach to galactic security. We hope for peace and cooperation with all species, but as a matter of standard protocol, we prepare for all possibilities. The delegates began speaking all at once, their voices overlapping as translator devices struggled to keep up. Some seemed outraged, others alarmed, and a few appeared oddly impressed. How could humans possibly have developed such contingencies? Demanded a representative of the gas-based Keltorians. Your species has been spacefaring for less than a century. Threat assessment and contingency planning is something of a human specialty, Daniel replied. We've had plenty of practice on Earth. The Arbiter raised all 4 of its upper limbs. This session will take a 30-minute recess while we process this information. As the delegates filed out, many casting wary glances at the human delegation. Olivia leaned toward Daniel. "Sir," she whispered urgently, "what have you done?" Daniel maintained his diplomatic smile. "Changed the game, Olivia. For better or worse, I just changed the game." Olivia pulled Daniel into a private meeting chamber as soon as they left the main hall. Frank followed, his hand resting near his concealed weapon as he checked that the room was secure. "What were you thinking?" Olivia hissed once the door seal shut. Her normally calm face was flushed with anger. "Those contingency plans are classified at the highest level. The Pentagon will have your head for this." Daniel loosened his collar and sat down calmly. "The classification is exactly why I could mention them. No one can demand to see classified Earth documents." But to admit their existence, Olivia paced back and forth. "We've spent 5 years building an image as harmless newcomers, and you just told 27 species that we've been plotting ways to destroy them." Frank checked his security tablet, which was receiving updates from their ship. "Station security forces are on the move. 4 species have increased their guards around their quarters. The Valaxians have sent urgent encrypted messages to their homeworld." Daniel nodded. "Expected, but notice they're not attacking us." "Not yet," Olivia muttered. "They won't," Daniel said confidently. "Think about it. For 5 years, we've been dismissed as primitive, barely worth noticing. Now they have to reconsider everything they thought they knew about humans." Frank looked up from his tablet. "Sir, we're getting a diplomatic request from the Murdarians. They're asking for a private meeting before the session resumes." This was unexpected. The Murdarians were energy beings known for their strict neutrality in galactic politics. They rarely requested private meetings with anyone. "Accepted," Daniel said, "but only their main representative, no assistants." 10 minutes later, a glowing blue form floated into their chamber. The Murdarian, called Pulse of Insight, had no solid body, just a swirling mass of energy contained within a specially designed hovering device that allowed it to navigate in physical space. Ambassador Wright, the Murdarian's translator, produced a soft, melodic voice. "Your statement has caused quite a stir." "I imagine it has," Daniel replied, offering the ceremonial greeting gesture for Murdarians, a slow wave of his hand through the air, mimicking their natural movement patterns. "Unlike the others, I am not here to demand explanations or make threats," Pulse of Insight said. "I am curious. Humans have been in galactic society for a very short time. How could you develop effective contingencies against species you barely know?" Daniel exchanged glances with Olivia, who gave a slight nod. "Humans evolved on what many would call a death world," Daniel explained. "Earth has more predator species per land area than any homeworld represented in the Concord. Before we developed technology, we survived through pattern recognition and threat assessment." The Murdarian pulsed with a soft blue light that indicated interest. "So you applied these survival skills to new potential threats?" "It's instinctive for us," Daniel said. "When we meet a new species, we automatically look for weaknesses and strengths. Not because we plan to attack, but because knowing how to defend ourselves makes us feel secure." Pulse of Insight floated closer. "Most species would consider this paranoid. We prefer prepared," Frank interjected. The Murdarian's energy field rippled in what might have been amusement. "And the Valaxians. Their biology and technology are quite advanced. Yet you claim to have found a vulnerability." Daniel smiled slightly. "Every system has weaknesses. The more complex the system, the more potential points of failure." Their conversation was interrupted by another alert on Frank's tablet. "Sir, station-wide announcement. The session will reconvene in 5 minutes." The Murdarian moved toward the door. "This will be an interesting session, Ambassador Wright. I believe you have, as humans say, shuffled the deck." After Pulse of Insight left, Olivia turned to Daniel. "Sir, the other representatives won't be as curious and calm as the Murdarian. They'll demand proof or denounce us as liars." "Let them," Daniel said, straightening his uniform. "Either way, They'll never look at humans the same way again. As they walked back toward the main chamber, they noticed increased security everywhere. Guards from various species lined the corridors, watching the human delegation with new wariness. Frank leaned close to Daniel. I count at least 3 different species scanning us with various detection devices. They're looking for weapons or technology they might have missed before. Daniel nodded slightly. Good. Let them look. The most dangerous human weapon has always been our minds, and they can't scan those. They reached the entrance to the chamber where the Arbiter waited. The crystalline being's faceted surface reflected light in patterns that suggested concern. Ambassador Wright, the Arbiter said quietly, "You have created a diplomatic situation without precedent in the Concord's history." Daniel met the Arbiter's gaze steadily. Sometimes precedents need to be broken for progress to occur. The doors opened, and they stepped back into the chamber where representatives from 27 spacefaring civilizations waited, all now viewing humanity through very different eyes. The chamber felt different when Daniel and his team entered. The casual conversations that usually filled the room before sessions had been replaced with tense silence. All eyes followed the human delegation as they took their seats. The Arbiter called the session to order, its crystalline form glowing slightly brighter than usual. Before we continue our discussion of the Perseus arm, there is a matter we must address. Ambassador Wright of Earth has made a statement that many delegates find concerning. Zextrol rose immediately, its massive insectoid form towering over the other representatives. Concerning. It was a direct threat to every civilization present. Several delegates voiced agreement, creating a wave of noise that the translator systems struggled to process. The Arbiter raised all 4 of its upper limbs for silence. Ambassador Wright, would you care to clarify your earlier statement? Daniel stood calmly, facing the assembly. I made no threats. I simply stated a fact about Earth's security protocols. All governments develop defensive strategies. We've merely been thorough in our approach. Zextrol's compound eyes fixed on Daniel. Its mandibles clicked rapidly, and what humans had learned was a sign of agitation. Then you claim to have these contingency plans for the Valaxian Dominion, the most advanced military power in this sector of the galaxy. Daniel nodded. We do. Impossible. Zextrol's voice rose so high that some translation devices emitted sharp feedback. Your primitive species has barely mastered warp technology. You have studied our civilization for only 5 years. No one could develop effective strategies against us in such a short time. A low murmur spread through the chamber as other representatives wondered the same thing. Perhaps, Daniel suggested, the war diplomat would like proof. This caused another stir. Even Olivia looked at Daniel with surprise. This wasn't part of their planned approach. Zextrol's exoskeleton shifted colors slightly, a sign of confidence. Yes, I demand proof of these supposed contingencies. Show us these plans you claim to have developed against the Valaxian Dominion. The massive insectoid loomed over Daniel. Its mandibles spread wide in what humans recognized as a dominance display. Several of its upper limbs moved in gestures that translated roughly to, I have called your bluff. Daniel smiled slightly. I cannot share classified Earth security documents with this assembly. However, I can offer a small demonstration. He turned directly to Zextrol. War diplomat, if you check the secure compartment in your personal quarters, the one hidden behind the thermal regulator where you keep your molting memento, you'll find something interesting that wasn't there yesterday. The chamber went completely silent. Zextrol's compound eyes widened, and its mandibles froze mid-click. The hidden compartment was a secret even from most Valaxians. The molting memento, a piece of its first adult exoskeleton, was deeply personal, something no outsider should know about. That's impossible. Zextrol stammered, its usual confidence shattered. Those quarters are secured with Valaxian encryption protocols. Yet we know about them, Daniel said simply. Perhaps you should verify my claim before dismissing it. Zextrol turned to the Arbiter. I request a brief recess to investigate this matter. The Arbiter, clearly as surprised as everyone else, granted the request. Zix Troll almost ran from the chamber, followed by 2 Valaxian aides. As soon as the insectoid left, the chamber erupted in voices. Representatives demanded to know if humans had infiltrated their quarters too. Some were already calling their ships for security suites. Frank leaned toward Daniel. "Sir, did we actually place something in the Valaxians' quarters?" Daniel nodded slightly. "Special Operations Team. Deployed last night while the station's security systems were undergoing regular maintenance." Olivia looked concerned. "What exactly did we put there?" "A data crystal containing the first 3 pages of our Valaxian contingency plan," Daniel replied quietly. "Just enough to prove we weren't bluffing, not enough to give away all our strategies." The Murdarian representative, Pulse of Insight, floated closer to the human delegation. Its energy field pulsed with what seemed to be amusement. "Most interesting," the Murdarian's translator said. "In one move, you have transformed humanity's position in the Concord, from dismissed newcomers to feared strategists." Daniel shook his head. "Not feared. Respected. There's a difference." "Perhaps," Pulse of Insight replied. "But fear often comes before respect when dealing with species that have never needed to fear before." The chamber doors slid open, and Zixextral returned. The Valaxian moved differently now. Slower, more cautiously. Its compound eyes never left Daniel as it took its seat. The Arbiter called for order. "War Diplomat Zixtral, have you verified Ambassador Reich's claim?" The massive insectoid seemed to shrink slightly. "I have," it said, its usual booming voice now subdued. "The humans speak the truth." The chamber remained silent for several long moments after Zixtral's confirmation. The Valaxians' admission had shocked the assembly. If humans could penetrate Valaxian security, what else might they be capable of? Olivia touched a control on her tablet, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a series of detailed analyses, biological, technological, and societal vulnerabilities of various species represented in the room. The information was presented in a simple format that anyone could understand, yet the depth of detail was impressive. "What you're seeing is a small portion of our standard assessment protocol," Daniel explained to the stunned assembly. "Every time Earth encounters a new species, we automatically begin this process. It's not hostile intent. It's habit formed over thousands of years of survival." A representative of the Dravik, a 6-legged species with stone-like skin, leaned forward. "How could primitive humans gather such detailed information about advanced civilizations?" Daniel walked to the center of the chamber, next to the holographic display. "Humanity evolved on what many would call a death world," he said. "Earth has more apex predators per region than any homeworld represented here. Before we developed technology, humans survived through pattern recognition and threat assessment." Frank stepped forward to join Daniel. His security background made him the perfect person to explain this aspect of humanity. While your civilizations were becoming specialists, humans remained dangerous generalists. We didn't perfect one approach. We developed thousands. He gestured to the display. "See these biological analyses. Humans have been studying biology since we first needed to know which plants would kill us and which animals were hunting us. These technological assessments. We've been evaluating the strengths and weaknesses of weapons since we first picked up sticks to defend ourselves." A representative of the gas-based Keltorians floated closer. Their translucent body pulsed with patterns that their translator converted to speech. "But this level of detail about species you've known for only 5 years is the result of our entire evolutionary history," Daniel finished for them. "Humans are always looking for patterns, always asking what if, always preparing for worst-case scenarios. It's how we survived on Earth." Olivia adjusted the display to show more detailed analyses. "Our team includes specialists in biology, technology, psychology, sociology, and military strategy. When we meet a new species, they all begin working from their own perspectives to understand potential strengths and weaknesses." The Arbiter studied the display with its crystalline sensory apparatus. These analyses are remarkably thorough. They include factors most species would not consider. That's because we consider everything, Daniel said. Humans aren't the strongest species, or the fastest, or the most technologically advanced. We survived by being the most adaptable, the most prepared. Pulse of Insight, the Murderian representative, moved forward, its energy field pulsing rapidly. I begin to understand. Humans appear technologically primitive because your species prioritized information gathering over weapon development. Exactly, Daniel nodded. Information has always been humanity's most valuable resource. A small reptilian delegate that had been quiet until now spoke up. But why reveal this now? You had the advantage of being underestimated. Daniel looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes, visual sensors, or sensory apparatuses of each representative in turn. Because that advantage was becoming a liability. Earth needs to be taken seriously in galactic affairs, not dismissed as harmless newcomers. He gestured to Zextral, who remained uncharacteristically silent. The Valaxian threats against smaller species in the Persis arm showed us that some in the Concord still believe might makes right. We needed to demonstrate that advanced weapon technology isn't the only form of power. The holographic display shifted to show Earth, a blue and green planet that looked deceptively peaceful from space. Our world taught us harsh lessons, Daniel continued. Humans fought each other for thousands of years before we achieved unity. We faced extinction-level events numerous times. Each crisis forced us to become more adaptable, more creative in our problem-solving. He pointed to specific sections of the display showing human biological attributes. We aren't specialized for any particular environment. We can survive in deserts, jungles, tundra, mountains, or oceans with minimal technological assistance. This adaptability extends to how we think. The chamber remained silent as the delegates processed this information about humanity. Many were seeing humans in an entirely new light, not as primitive newcomers, but as a uniquely dangerous species that had developed a completely different approach to survival. While the assembly was still processing Daniel's revelations, the chamber doors opened, and Zixtrell's two aides rushed in. They moved quickly to their leader, chittering in their native language too rapidly for translators to process. The war diplomats' compound eyes widened as they spoke. Zixtrell stood suddenly, interrupting the ongoing discussion. My homeworld reports unauthorized access to our main fleet communication network. Someone has been testing our security protocols. Other representatives began receiving similar urgent communications from their ships and homeworlds. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of voices, translation devices struggling to keep up with the multiple overlapping conversations. This goes beyond contingency planning, shouted a representative of the crystalline Noor collective. Humans have been actively probing our defenses. Daniel remained calm as accusations flew around the chamber. He waited for the arbiter to restore order, which took several minutes of the crystalline being emitting harmonic tones that somehow cut through the chaos. Ambassador Wright, the arbiter said once silence returned. These are serious allegations. Has Earth been conducting active intelligence operations against Concord members? Daniel exchanged glances with Olivia, who gave a slight nod. Arbiter, with respect, every species in this room conducts intelligence operations, Daniel said. The difference is that humans are particularly good at it. We developed these skills competing against each other long before we reached the stars. He turned to face the assembly. Yes, we have gathered information to develop our contingency plans, but we have never used this information to harm any species. Our operations are defensive in nature. Troll's mandibles clicked rapidly. The data crystal in my quarters contained detailed plans for using our own communication protocols against us. You could disable our entire fleet with this knowledge. We could, Daniel acknowledged. But we haven't, despite provocations. That should tell you something about our intentions. Representatives from various species were now huddled with their aides, receiving reports from their homeworlds. Each report seemed to confirm that humans had indeed developed specific contingencies tailored to their unique vulnerabilities. The Arbiter's crystalline form pulsed with colors that indicated deep concern. Ambassador Wright, it seems Earth's apparent technological backwardness was partly a facade. Not a facade, Daniel corrected. A different focus. While we truly lack the advanced propulsion and energy production of older civilizations, we have uniquely sophisticated information gathering and analysis capabilities. Olivia stepped forward. We call it wargaming. Humans have been preparing for encounters with hostile forces since before we left our atmosphere. Frank added, during humanity's Cold War period, we developed these skills to an art form. Two major powers spent decades preparing for conflicts that never happened, refining contingency planning to levels never seen before. The Keltorian representative floated closer, its gas-filled body pulsing with neural patterns that showed intense curiosity. You plan for wars you don't expect to fight. Exactly, Daniel nodded. The best outcome of any contingency plan is never having to use it. A new voice entered the conversation. The small reptilian delegate who had spoken earlier now addressed the assembly. My species has studied human history since their arrival in the Concord. Their Cold War was fascinating. Two powers deterring each other through the knowledge that conflict would be mutually destructive. The reptilian's vertical pupils fixed on Daniel. Is that your strategy here, Ambassador? Mutual deterrence. Daniel smiled slightly. It's been effective for humans. We thought it might work well in galactic politics too. The Arbiter turned its sensory apparatus toward Zixtral. War diplomat, what exactly was in the data crystal found in your quarters? The insectoid being seemed reluctant to answer. Finally, it said, a detailed analysis of our fleet communication systems, with a proposed method for creating a cascading failure that would temporarily disable our vessels, and proof that this method was tested successfully on a small scale against one of our outpost beacons. This revelation sent another wave of murmurs through the chamber. The humans had not just theorized about Valaxian vulnerabilities, they had proven their theories worked. The Arbiter's crystalline form dimmed slightly, a sign of deep thought. Ambassador Wright, I must ask directly, does Earth intend these contingencies as threats against the Concord? Daniel stood tall as he answered, no, Arbiter. We intend them as insurance policies. Humanity doesn't want conflict. We want trade, cultural exchange, and peaceful coexistence. But we survived on Earth by always being prepared for those who might want us extinct. As tensions reached a breaking point in the chamber, Daniel raised his hand for attention. The gesture was simple, but something in his calm authority made the assembled representatives fall silent. I understand your concerns, he said. Finding out that a species you considered primitive has been analyzing your vulnerabilities is unsettling. But I ask you to consider this from our perspective. Daniel walked to the center of the room, where the holographic display still showed Earth rotating slowly. 5 years ago, humans learned we weren't alone in the universe. We discovered that dozens of advanced civilizations have been watching us for centuries, waiting for us to develop warp technology. Civilizations with weapons that could destroy our planet in minutes. He looked around the chamber. How would your species have reacted? Would you have simply trusted that these powerful strangers meant you no harm? Several representatives shifted uncomfortably. The question was fair. Humans have always prepared for the worst while hoping for the best, Daniel continued. These contingencies aren't threats. They're our way of feeling secure enough to open ourselves to peaceful relations. Olivia touched her tablet, and the holographic display changed. Instead of showing vulnerabilities, it now displayed dozens of potential collaboration projects between Earth and various species, medical breakthroughs, cultural preservation techniques, sustainable resource development, and more. For every defense contingency, we've developed 10 cooperation initiatives, she explained. We just needed you to take us seriously first. The Arbiter moved closer to examine the new display. These are remarkably detailed proposals. Because we've put as much effort into planning for peace as we have for potential conflicts, Daniel said. Maybe more. Frank stepped forward. Earth has a long history of former enemies becoming allies. After our world wars, nations that fought each other became their strongest partners within a generation. The small reptilian delegate's tongue flicked out, tasting the air, a sign of deep thought in their species. So the revelation of these contingency plans was not meant to threaten, but to establish respect. Exactly, Daniel nodded. It's hard to build meaningful relationships when one party is dismissed as harmless or primitive. Pulse of Insight, the Murderian representative, began to emit a harmonic tone that the translators rendered as laughter. Its energy field rippled with patterns that suggested genuine amusement. The humans have played a fascinating game, the Murderian said. They came appearing weak while assessing all of us, not for conquest, but to ensure their survival while seeking partnership. Zextral had been silent for some time, its compound eyes focused on the cooperation initiatives displayed in the hologram. Finally, the Valaxian spoke, its voice lacking its usual aggressive tone. These medical techniques, it said, pointing to one section of the display. They would help treat exoskeleton degradation that affects our eldest case members. Olivia nodded. Yes, we noticed the pattern in your medical databases. Our researchers believe human regenerative therapies could be adapted for Valaxian physiology. The insectoid's antennae twitched in surprise. You had access to our medical databases too. We did, Daniel admitted. But look at what we chose to do with that information. Develop treatments, not weapons. Other representatives began examining the cooperation initiatives related to their species. Many found solutions to problems they hadn't shared publicly, evidence that humans had indeed been studying them deeply. But not just for weaknesses. The Keltorian representative's gas-filled body glowed brighter as they examined one proposal. This atmospheric stabilization technique, it would help our youngest generation maintain form cohesion during development. Yes, Daniel confirmed. We noticed the increasing particle dispersion in your nursery environments. Our climate control technologies could help. Around the chamber, the mood began to shift. The initial fear and anger were giving way to curiosity and cautious interest. Species that had moments ago felt violated by human intelligence gathering were now seeing the potential benefits of human problem-solving apply to their unique challenges. The Arbiter's crystalline form glowed with calm blue light. Ambassador Wright, I believe I begin to understand humanity better now. You are indeed dangerous, but not in the way we initially feared. Daniel smiled slightly. Humans can be dangerous friends or dangerous enemies. We much prefer the first option. The Murderian's energy field pulsed in what seemed to be agreement. The humans remind me of an old Murderian saying, "The most valuable ally is one who has thoroughly considered what it would take to defeat you, and chosen friendship instead." 1 week later, Daniel stood by the viewing window in the Earth delegation's ship as it prepared to undock from the Harmonious Exchange Station. The stars beyond the glass seemed brighter somehow, as if the galaxy itself had changed during the summit. Final departure clearance granted. The ship's captain announced over the intercom. We'll be heading home in 5 minutes, Ambassador. Olivia joined Daniel at the window, data tablet in hand. The last agreements were just finalized. I never expected this outcome. Neither did I, Daniel admitted. At least not so quickly. The past week had transformed humanity's position in the Galactic Concord. After the initial shock of Daniel's revelation, the summit had shifted in remarkable ways. Species that had previously ignored Earth now sought meetings with the human delegation. Trade negotiations that had stalled for years suddenly found new momentum. Most surprising of all had been the Valaxians. On the final day of the summit, war diplomat Zextral had formally proposed a military exchange program with Earth. The insectoid species wanted to learn human strategic thinking, offering advanced defensive technology in return. 7 new technology sharing agreements, Olivia said, scrolling through her tablet. 4 cultural exchange programs, and direct access to the Concord's scientific database. The Pentagon and United Earth government are ecstatic. Frank entered the room, his security duties finally complete. Ship's been fully checked. We're ready for departure. He looked at Daniel. Did you see the news? The Valaxians are already referring to humans as worthy adversaries in their official communications. From them, that's high praise. Daniel smiled slightly. And all it took was admitting we've been planning for ways to beat them in a fight. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Olivia checked her tablet. It's the Arbiter requesting a private channel with you. Daniel nodded, and Olivia set up the secure line before leaving with Frank to give Daniel privacy. The Arbiter's crystalline form appeared on the small view screen. Ambassador Wright, the ancient being said, I wish to speak with you before your departure. Of course, Arbiter, what can I do for you? The crystalline being's surface shimmered with light patterns that suggested deep thought. I have served as Arbiter for 300 years. In that time, I have witnessed 17 new species join the Concord. None have changed the diplomatic landscape as quickly as humans have. Daniel wasn't sure if this was criticism or praise. Change was necessary for Earth's security. Indeed, the Arbiter agreed. But it is not just your contingency plans that interest me. It is how quickly your species adapts to new information. Most require generations to adjust to new paradigms. Humans do it between breakfast and dinner. This made Daniel laugh. We've had plenty of practice. Earth changes constantly. The Arbiter's form pulsed with light. The Concord will be watching humanity's development with great interest. Your approach is unique. Some find it concerning, others fascinating. And you, Arbiter, what do you think? The ancient being was silent for a moment. I think the galaxy became more interesting when humans joined it. Safe travels, Ambassador Wright. The communication ended, and Daniel turned back to the viewport. The station was now receding as the ship pulled away. In one of the docking bays, he could see the massive Valaxian vessel preparing for its own departure. The insectoid species that had once dismissed humans as primitives now viewed them as valued partners. Olivia and Frank returned as the ship's engines engaged for the journey home. Do you think we did the right thing? Olivia asked. Revealing our contingency planning could have backfired badly. Daniel watched as the stars began to streak past as the ship accelerated. It was a calculated risk. That's what humans do best. We assess, we plan, we take necessary risks. Frank nodded. The old saying holds true. If you want peace, prepare for war. But we prepared for more than war, Daniel said quietly. We prepared for peace too. That's the part they didn't expect. As Earth's ship entered warp, Daniel thought about the new path forward for humanity in the galactic community. No longer seen as primitive newcomers, they were now viewed as unpredictable equals worthy of both caution and respect. Earth would continue its dual approach, extending one hand in friendship while the other remained ready. Not out of malice, but because that vigilant duality was the very essence of what made humans survive on their deadly home planet long enough to reach the stars. We came in peace, Daniel murmured as the stars streaked by. But we came prepared. That's the most human thing about us.